Good morning, everyone. Call to order, councillors. It is 9 o'clock and we are going to commence our meeting. So while we're just preparing, can you please turn your mobile devices to silent? So thank you. Please note that this meeting we have updated our COVID practices to conform with the current orders that are in place for New South Wales and in this area. So this will be a hybrid Zoom meeting and there is no gallery this morning. For anyone joining us for the first time, council meetings are open to the public and live streamed to allow people to observe council in the decision-making process. However, today, because of the COVID restrictions and where we're at, we are not having people in the gallery, but the live stream is available. It's a regulation requirement to advise anyone present that your attendance is taken as consent to the possibility that your image and or voice may be recorded and broadcast to the public via our live stream. Any other visual or sound recordings of the meeting requires prior permission, and that decision or that permission must be a unanimous decision of council. Council will break at approximately 10:30 to allow councillors and staff time for a short break. In the chambers today, we have Councillor Shields, Councillor Baxter, Councillor Saul, Councillor Williams, Councillor Patterson and Councillor McGinn. We are joined by Zoom by Councillor Morris and Councillor Horval. We have Craig Milburn, the General Manager, Director of Operation and Planning, Robert Fish, the Director of Corporate and Commercial, Stephen Mitchell, our Manager for Governance, Daniel Thorogood, assisted by a minute taker, which is Melanie Patterson. Or is it Pedersen? Peterson. I'll get it right one day, Melanie. Okay. Reminder, councillors, that voting will be a call for any dissent vote. Non-dissent vote is in the affirmative. Abstaining vote is recorded as a vote against. Please, for those zooming in, use your hand signal and microphone when called to speak. If you forget to turn off your hand or your microphone, that will be okay. We'll facilitate that through Mr. Thorogood, our Governance Manager. Councillors, a couple of things to remember in chambers to activate your microphones. And when you're acknowledged to speak, be aware that we do have the ability to move into workshop if it's agreed by the majority of councillors for any item that we wish to have more informal discussion on. So welcome councillors, General Manager, the executive team and staff, and for anyone joining us by live stream. We'll begin with item number 1, which is the opening prayer. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberations today, that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Kempsey Shire. Amen. And Kempsey Shire acknowledges the land of the Thungadi-Dungadi Nation. We pay respects to the elders past and present. We acknowledge the role of the emerging leaders to continue to guide us in the future. We acknowledge the stolen generations and the need to change practices to be inclusive. This land always was and always will be Thungadi and Dungadi land. Item number 3 is apologies. There's no apologies received this morning and we're all present. Councillor Horval, your video is not on. If you'd like to turn your video on, that would be great. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'm having a computer problem at the moment. I'm trying to restart everything. It's crashed, so I'm coming through the iPad, but I will try to fix it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you need us to take a minute for you to get organised, or are you fine?
No, I can still see it on the iPad, so I'll keep going, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 4 is the confirmation of minutes for the council meeting of the 29th of June to be confirmed. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Do I have a seconder?
Second, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Saul. Or was that Councillor Morris? Councillor Morris, were you putting your hand up to speak? or to second? I'm sorry, Councillor Morris, you need to put your microphone on.
I already had previously, but obviously somebody must have turned it off. I put my hand up so that I can move an amendment after it's been moved and seconded.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Horville, was yours to speak or to second?
Madam Mayor, I had a question about seemingly innocent mistake in attributing who moved and seconded the motions on page 10 and 11. I wonder if that could be looked at, please.
Okay, well, we do have a mover, which was Councillor McGinn and seconded by Councillor Saul. I just needed to clarify that. Okay, we'll take the amendment, and then Councillor Horville has the question. Thank you, Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, on item 9.1, Councillor McGinn moved the motion in regards to the operating plan, or not the operating plan, the planning and reporting suite. What she actually moved was that, as is recorded, which with the changes outlined in this report, including the investigation of flood immunity options for Crescent Head Rudders Lagoon, but then she added, and subsequently pursue grant funding to upgrade this section of road. That is not included. I actually seconded it, and I seconded it on the basis of that additional inclusion, as opposed to merely what is recommended in the minutes, which is what has appeared in the recommendation. So I'd like to see that added, and subsequently pursue grant funding to upgrade this section of road for the 21-22 year.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we can just correct that, Councillor Morris.
So should it not be an amendment, though, because it clearly is an addition? It is what was stated, but it is an addition. I'd like it recorded as an amendment, please. It can be accepted by whoever, but please record it as an amendment.
Happy to accept it.
Councillor Morris, the mover has accepted it into the motion.
Okay. Yep. Also, in addition, on item 7.1, this doesn't need to be considered as amendment, just as a correction. On page 5, it's got the recommendation, paras 1, 2, 3. Then when it comes down to being moved by you, Madam Mayor, it says that council, then it's paras 4, 5, 6. They should be adjusted back to 1, 2, 3. I also question whether it is appropriate that it be stated on the top of page 14 that I left the chambers at 12:30 or that I left the meeting, because I was never physically in the chambers, therefore I physically cannot have left the chamber. And at the start of the meeting, we do record separately those that are physically in the chamber and those that are attending by digital connection, which today is Microsoft Teams and was then as well.
Thank you. General Manager, is that
we'll just through you, Madam Mayor, we'll just make that amendment, that change.
Yep, that's all I expected it to be. Just that I didn't leave the chambers. I wasn't physically there. I left the meeting.
Madam Mayor, can I have a question, please? No.
I'm just going to take Councillor Horville first. Thank you, Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I unmuted. Thank you. Yes, I've now got the main computer working again, thankfully. Yes, pages 10, what page was it? On pages 12 and 13, I'm a bit confused about who moved and seconded the resolution. For some reason, Councillor Morris's name appears when Councillor Shields and I were moving and seconding the motion. Can that be fixed, please? Can I be heard?
Yes, yes, you've been heard. That's fine. That's been corrected.
Thank you. I'd also like to move an amendment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
I move that the actual wording of question 13 from Councillor Horville be included in the minutes, with the present incorrectly numbered question 13 be renumbered and asked as question 14. The question was, as the May Council Chair's ruling that there be no questioning of reports that inform staff recommendation to Council may appear to be dictatorial or fascist to an informed person of Kempsey Shire, and also a curtailing of councillors' democratic role to direct and supervise the Local Government Act 1993, where does the Chair, with concurring advice from the General Manager, derive this ruling from the Code of Meeting Practice?
I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Morris.
I may quickly speak to it, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
The General Manager has actually emailed me and said that I couldn't change the question because you've already placed this on the public record at the council meeting. He actually stated that to me, that it's not in the public record, it's not in the business papers for this council meeting, and it's not in the minutes. So I suggested be put back in there, and if there's no answer or there's a disagreement with the answer or question, that's fine, but that's what I think should happen with this. It was actually asked, and it should be in the record. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morris, you have your hand up.
Correct.
Yes, Councillor Morris.
The wording that has been put up for the amendment on the screen reads with adding subsection of road once funding is achieved. What I read out and what was stated by Councillor McGinn at the last meeting was, and subsequently pursue grant funding to upgrade this section of road. Can we please correct that to what I asked the change to be?
It was our intention, Councillor Morris, to go back to the recording and get exactly what was said at the meeting. However,
what is there is nowhere near what was stated. I'm happy for you to go back and check it, but it should at least read what I asked it to read when I stated it, and that is, and subsequently pursue grant funding to upgrade this section of road.
Can you read that slower, please, Councillor Morris?
And subsequently pursue grant funding to upgrade this section of road.
Thank you. That'll be on the screen momentarily.
This is becoming a game.
That's not one at all.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question through to the General Manager, Mr. Milburn. On these matters, semantics of wording, etc., that are recording of the previous minutes of the meeting, would any of these change the actual outcome of the meeting, and could have any of these been brought forward to the briefing session last night and not wasted valuable time of the staff?
Point of order. Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Horville, your point of order is?
The question being asked by Councillor Patterson has been asked repeatedly by him at previous meetings, and he gets the same answer. I would like him to understand that we've already have the discussion about minutes and putting changes up, and he has been answered. But I'm quite happy for him to answer again. But I think it's a waste of time for him to keep asking the same question.
Question was to.
Actually, Councillor Horville, I won't uphold the point of order because I will. You said that you were happy for him to ask the question, and I'll get the General Manager to give the answer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, as it has been previously indicated, most of the things that have been raised today could have been emailed in by the councillors, and they could have actually just been adjusted as points in the minutes, and they could have even been updated on the web by now if they were sent in earlier. The slight change of the wording that Councillor Morris has put forward, that certainly is one that does change slightly the wording, and that is something that can certainly be dealt with here. What I will say to all the councillors is that we have had verbal advice from LG New South Wales that when a councillor repeatedly brings before council business that they know will not be supported by councillors, by the majority of the councillors, they bring disorder to the chamber. That is a breach of the Code of Conduct. So that's just for councillors to be aware of.
Thank you, General Manager. Is there any dissent on the amendment? Is there any dissent on the amendment?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just clarifying. I thought Councillor McGinn accepted the first 2 points. Is the amendment just that we include question 13?
We are now dealing with Councillor Horble's amendment,
Which is just about 13. Yep.
which is about question 13. Is there any dissent on the amendment? So, I'm not sure if Councillor Horval had included in his amendment Councillor Horval, in your amendment, you didn't include the amendment that Councillor Morris had suggested, did you?
Yes, I'd say whatever was put up and accepted as a friendly amendment, I was amending that motion, Madam Mayor.
So it was in addition to the accepted amendment of Councillor McGinn's?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Correct. Okay. So, is there any dissent on the amendment? So the amendment has been lost. We're back to the original motion. Yes. Is there any dissent on the motion? Councillor Horval. Thank you. We will move on to any disclosures of interest.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have one.
I'll take Councillor Horval, then I'll take Councillor McGinn, Councillor Patterson.
My declaration of interest, Madam Mayor, I declare a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in item 9.1, Crescent Head Public Domain Plan, foreshore car parking area, as I am a member of a private Facebook group, Crescent Head Progress Group, administered by Ross Foster.
Councillor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in items 10.2 and 11.1. 10.2 because we lease a riverbank from Kempsey Shire Council, and 11.1 because I'm known to one of the parties.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to declare my non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in item 9.3, as I actually own a few blocks of land in the Kempsey Business District that are in the floodway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, ditto, Councillor Horval. I'm also a non-active member, a member of the Facebook group, Crescent Head Progress Group, although I am an inactive member. But seeing it's been declared by one councillor, I felt I should do the same declaration.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Thank Councillors. Order. Item number 6. Items passed by exception there is item 9.5, WIGAY Aboriginal Cultural Park, 9.6, Local Event Day application, 9.7, Development Activity and LEP Variation, the Quarterly Snapshot, 9.8, the Statement of Cash and Investments, 11.1, Legal Matters, and 11.2, Provision of Project Management and Engineering Services.
Move that way, Madam Mayor.
Second that.
Before we move it, councillors can either ask any questions before it is moved. I'm just going to read out what is for people that are on Zoom or listening in. What is items of exception state that councils or a committee of council may at any time resolve to adopt multiple items of business on the agenda together by way of a single resolution. Before the council or committee resolves to adopt multiple items of business on the agenda together, the chairperson must list the items of business to be adopted and ask councillors to identify any individual items of business listed by the chairperson that they intend to vote against, the recommendation made in the business paper, or they wish to speak on, or they wish to ask questions. Well, it's not stated here, but you can just ask questions. The council must not resolve to adopt any items of business that a councillor has identified as being one that they intend to vote against the recommendation made in the business paper or to speak on. So we have items listed here, but we call for items to be either spoken against or removed or simply questions. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to withdraw 9.7 and 11.1, please.
Thank you, councillor. Is there any other withdrawals, questions? No? Okay. Is there any dissent on the recommendation?
Who moved it, Madam Mayor?
I need a mover. You moved Councillor McGinn and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any dissent? There's no dissent. Thank you, councillors. We move on to item number 9.1, which is the Crescent Head Public Domain Foreshore car parking area.
Madam Mayor, I move that way as printed in the actual document.
Thank you, councillor. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor
Madam Mayor,
McGinn.
I'd like to move it for shadowed motion.
So we have a mover and a seconder. We have a foreshadowed motion. And no one wants to go into workshop, it would seem.
Into workshop, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn has moved that we go into workshop. Councillor Shields has seconded that. So before we take the foreshadowed motion, which as soon as we get into workshop, I'll ask Councillor Patterson to state. Is there any dissent into moving into workshop? No. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Patterson, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move this foreshadowed motion in relation to this item. The council bring back
Just a moment, because we're in workshop.
Yeah.
I think maybe you might need to be highlighting that this would be the foreshadowed motion because you can't quite move it because we're not in open council, just
Okay.
technicality.
Yeah.
Off you go.
So the foreshadowed motion, what I would like to move is this, that bring back a further report back to council in approximately 24 months with more options of retaining maximum number of car parks on the foreshore and a skate park design and location in a concept design developed through a council development group containing members of the most relevant groups, ratepayers, surf council, business, community members, residents, business owners, and continue to keep the community engaged throughout this process. And Madam Mayor, the reason why I'm going to speak on the foreshadowed motion, the reason why I'd like to bring this back to council is that I do believe that we still have time to work with this program. We still have time to get it right. We are not, I believe, in any rush to do this. The work that council has done up to date on this has been really good. I think we need to go a bit further. We actually we need to acknowledge the fact of a surf culture at Crescent Head, and I do think that the current planning doesn't register that. So I do think in our discussion today, we need to move forward with this foreshadowed motion, that we move it down the road, 24 months, and we bring it back to council. In that time, we will have had more time to see how the effect of the opening of Plumbers Lane, like through to Plumbers, will have on the necessity of surfers only looking mainly towards that main car park or that main beach. We also would look forward to seeing what the difference, the COVID issue with the change in tourism in our area. So I do believe we're a little bit putting things a little bit in front of where they should be. So I'd commend my fellow councillors to support this foreshadowed motion, and I'm looking forward to enjoy the discussion over this.
I'll take Councillor Horval and then take Councillor Baxter. Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask Councillor Patterson if his foreshadowed motion would include the option of retaining the foreshore car park. Should that also be part of the consideration, Councillor Patterson?
Madam Mayor, can I answer that? Yeah. I suppose.
Councillor Patterson.
Well, in my foreshadowed motion, I'm stating that council 24 months bring options of retaining maximum number of car parks on the foreshore and a skate park design and location. So, Councillor Horville, the maximum number may be the complete number existing. The maximum number may be 25. So I would like council to go back and do a little bit more design work. And like I spoke at over the last few days about the options for council to look at this holistically, and this may be a long-term look, maybe over the next 10 and 15 years, that we may be able to work with state government on the Crown lands and actually move a little bit of that around. Possibly, that's an option that we haven't seen yet, that we may be able to manipulate parts of the caravan park, possibly in exchange for other land that we don't, that no particular entity loses or gains. So I do think we have a long way to go. And yes, Councillor Horville, that may be available, I believe, in the wording that I've got written, but I am open to slight changes in that, if more discussion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson.
Councillor Morris. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the big picture, the council is kindly going to spend something like $5 million out of Crescent Head with this master plan, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, for which we are all deeply appreciative. With stage 1 at the CBD there, I think the planning department came back with numerous designs. They went and consulted the shop owners, the people that are directly concerned with the redesign of the CBD, the footpaths there opposite the country club. And those numerous consultations and numerous redesigns resulted in a plan that the stakeholders were happy with. And the same thing's going to happen with the redevelopment of the park outside the bakery. And so I agree with the Councillor Patterson. I think there's nothing wrong with looking at the numerous options for stage 3, the foreshore car park, and consulting with the stakeholders in that stage 3, And looking at all these variables that Councillor Patterson's mentioned, I mean, we're looking at an avalanche of domestic tourism. We're looking at we've really got to look at it outside the box, as Councillor Patterson says, and maybe just not redesigning within the footprint. So to look at all of these possibilities, I think is beholding on us, considering we're spending an enormous amount of money out there, and we really need to get it right. And I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at 10 options. I think we've looked at 6 options since last October. Well, you know, if another 3, to look at more options, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And we do have time. Nothing's going to happen out there at the foreshore for some years away, because we've still got to get stage 1, stage 2 done. So I agree with the foreshadowed motion. I think to spend some more time looking at some more options is a sensible thing to do.
Councillor Morris, and then I'll take Councillor McGinn.
Madam Mayor, I disagree with the recommendation. I agree more with the suggestion of the foreshadowed motion. I question though whether 24 months is probably longer than what would be desirable, particularly if there is continued angst within the community. We need to try to do something there. I'd also like to see added to that, and if our current motion goes down, the foreshadowed motion will then be debated and discussed. I'd like to see added in there that we consider a concept design for the playground, so that we know that that is going to fit and that is there. I'd also like to see added right at the start that we go out and survey the community via your say Macleay over say a 28-day survey period as to what the community's appetite would be for say option 4 with no foreshore parking, or the retention of foreshore parking, whether that be all of the foreshore parking that is there or a portion of foreshore parking. And if the option is for a portion, we ask what sort of numbers those community members would believe would be a reasonable number. That gives the new council the opportunity and the staff the opportunity to look at what is the best way forward. We might have the community come out and overwhelmingly say they want to retain all the parking, or conversely they might come out and overwhelmingly say they want to get rid of all of the parking. And we should be doing what the community expresses as their desire. Although in my mind, I like the idea of the drive-by, but I also like the idea of the foreshore parking. And somehow we need to find an option that facilitates both the drive-by and the foreshore parking. And the one that was presented in the public forum by Mr. Josh Dennis yesterday ticks all that off. It's just a matter of what is the extent of parking that is required and what is the right balance between the car parking and the green space area. I just question whether we need to take 24 months to do that. But I would take advice from the General Manager as to what the funding timeframe is likely to be, although, as was stated earlier, it's likely to be even more time than that. It may be less. We'll just wait and see.
How about putting up?
Yes, Councillor McGinn.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I was just going to suggest with Councillor Morris, instead of, given that we're in workshop, instead of having approximately 24 months, having up to 24 months.
Yeah.
Because it could be ready in 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. Yeah. It gives some sort of time frame. Could I now make my comment?
Yes.
I don't actually support the motion, the original recommendation that's printed in the agenda, mainly because I'm not sure that we need to make such detailed decisions now when we're still some years, a number of years off of having the funding to actually, turn the first sod on the work. So I'm not quite sure why we need to actually get down to such detailed argy-bargy. But having said that, I do realise that we need to have a fairly detailed plan to be able to understand what the costs would be of implementing a plan. So I do understand the position that staff are in. My comment would be about, I think we need to find a balance between the green space and the parking spots. And it seems to me that we're having some pretty good attempts at it, but we're not quite there yet. I don't think we want to go for retaining the whole of the car park. That's not what I'm hearing from the community. And I'm also not hearing that the majority of the community wants all green space and no driving so that you can see the surf, or some car parks that face the surf. So I think this is all about balance. And I think we might need a little bit more time to really understand what that balanced position actually looks like to be able to sign it off. So I certainly do think that we need some time, more time to consider this, and up to 24 months would suit, I would think. After all, we'll have a new council then. There may be new members in the community that wish to have a say, that don't feel like even though they have been given time to contribute, that they still want to comment. I do caution us, though, on throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We have had significant consultation. There has been an opportunity for people to consult. Obviously, some people are unhappy with the option that we've come up with, option 4, and the other various iterations. And so for that reason, I think we need to continue to engage with the community throughout this process. But I do feel that I need to say that we have had extensive engagement. There are a lot of people who've been involved in coming to the point that we've come to, and I think we would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater if we ignored all of that and started planning what our own personal nuances may prefer, because we're not 9 designers sitting around a council chamber. We need to listen to the community and balance those needs between the green space and the parking spots. So I do commend the staff on how far we have come. What we've got is actually terrific. What we now need to do, I believe, is just tweak it a bit over an engagement process.
No other councillors want to speak? Councillor Patterson, then I'll take Councillor Shields.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just something that the foreshadowed motion, I do believe that it does miss, and I think I'd like to add this part to it. Just starting from the top of it again, bring a further report back to council in up to 24 months with more options of retaining maximum number of car parks on the foreshore, and the playground and skate park design and location in a concept design that recognises the surf culture of Crescent Head, because I think that's something that we haven't allowed for in our dealings so far. Now, it's something that if you probably go over and somewhere overseas and you say something about Crescent Head, someone will say, yeah, that's the surf place in Australia, So I think we need to recognise the surf culture of Crescent Head. So if I could get that into the foreshadowed motion, and I'm sorry about my use of English in this, but with the help of my fellow councillors, I think we should be able to get that in there. How does that read there?
Can I suggest a tweak?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to suggest that since we're working on this, where we have balancing, with more options of retaining a maximum number of car parks on the foreshore, I'm thinking the words should be balancing the need for maximising the number of car parks on the foreshore while balancing the need for green space.
While you're getting that down, I'm going to take Councillor Shields, then Councillor Hall.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion.
Then back to Councillor Morris. Yes, Councillor Morris, your procedural motion.
My procedural motion, Madam Mayor, is that we go back into normal council, not in workshop. The reason for that is we are now effectively debating and modifying a foreshadowed motion, which may or may not become the motion. Therefore, if it doesn't, we are wasting time. So I was suggesting that we go back into normal council, vote on the matter that is at hand. If it is voted down, we then adopt the foreshadowed motion and then go back into workshop to debate that in an appropriate manner, or to discuss that in an appropriate manner.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question, please?
We have a procedural motion that needs to be dealt with first.
Well, the question is about the procedural motion, Madam Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Madam Mayor, do we need a procedural motion to do this when Councillor Patterson has said this is a foreshadowed motion? Why is it not an amendment to replace the present recommendation?
I think in his terminology, calling it a foreshadowed motion was probably premature if we're in workshop. What we're doing is working on maybe an amendment motion, not really a foreshadowed motion. In that instance, when you're in workshop, you don't have to speak to it, you don't have to commend it, you don't have to. At the moment, my understanding was we were trying to work on a new, what we could possibly come to a consensus with, rather than have, and I understand why Councillor Morris was wanting that to be clarified, because it seemed like we were debating a foreshadowed motion.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
So I think if we stay in workshop, we need to just be aware of this is a conversation. It's a workshop at this point, and we're just putting up ideas rather than trying to. And the reason why it would be a foreshadowed motion and not an amendment is it's quite different to what the original motion was.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor.
I'll just ask Mr. Thorogood from Governance. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, through you, Madam Mayor, what council actually does when it moves into workshop is moves into committee of the whole. This is actually no different than effectively instantly forming a standing committee of all councillors to consider an item. So very much like if you resolve to send this item to a committee to decide, at the end of it, what really happens is the committee makes a recommendation to council, and then council adopts or doesn't adopt that recommendation. So when you come out of the workshop, the recommendation which is on the table at that time that the committee of the whole has made can be entirely different than what the question was that went into the committee. Very much like when you refer a matter to a committee, they can come up with a different recommendation. So as long as the committee of the whole is agreed on what the recommendation is that they effectively send back into the open council meeting, it can be almost anything.
Just a moment. We still have to deal with the fact that the councillor has moved a procedural motion, which I don't believe we have seconded at this point. Councillor.
Madam Mayor, I'll withdraw the procedural motion, but it should not be considered as a foreshadowed motion. It should be considered as a potential amendment.
Correct.
But we've referred to it as a foreshadowed motion the whole time, and we are debating it and modifying the wording on that as if the first one has already been voted down.
Correct. Councillor Shield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to support the amendment at this point with some further wordsmithing. I like the idea of the 24 months of that approximately, rather than saying up to, because up to, it may come back straight away in the next council, you know, within the first meeting, who knows. I think if we said approximately 24 months, it gives the community that little bit of time to settle. Obviously, there's a lot of heat and emotion in this argument at the moment, and that's not when our best decisions are made. So I think with some time, everyone can settle and we can actually get some good concepts and some more factual information coming through. It also gives time for new councillors. It can sometimes take 18 months to settle into the role. You don't want to be making a big decision like this, I think, within your first, you know, possibly 6 months to a year. I think, so giving it some time will definitely lead to a better outcome, but I feel like at the moment, we gave this motion last time, and council staff have done exactly that. They've tweaked it and they've come back, within a short period. So giving a time period will add some more certainty as to what we're doing for the councillors and for the community. But I think in terms of striking that balance, adding a few more foreshore car parks into that sort of current proposed design isn't striking that balance. So we need to go further into more foreshore parking and again get somewhere between this proposed design and what's there currently, somewhere a bit more in the middle. But overall, that time, the 24 months, is going to allow us to take a more holistic look. Our big issue at Crescent Head is traffic congestion. And to me, I look at that proposed design of option 4 and I just see further traffic congestion and problems and issues. And I think we're just going to end up spending a lot of money to actually increase the inherent traffic problems out there. So with that further time, we need to look at or acknowledge the surfing culture, look at green space, car parking, traffic movements, the skate park, the playground, and possibly even the caravan park with time. I do think we can find a better design, but this is going to take a long time, and it's possibly going to take longer than 24 months. But we do acknowledge that there's been some great community consultation done already, and we're not going back to the drawing board. However, what we've got proposed today is not fitting what we need for Crescent Head.
Thank you, Councillor Shields. Oh dear. Okay, that's a fine on me.
Are we ready to move back in?
No, Councillor Williams hasn't spoken, and I would like to say something as well. And I don't think either Councillor Saul has, and Councillor Horville's got his hand up as well.
Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Horville was well before me. So
oh, okay. Well, I'll take Councillor Horville first, and then I've still got Councillor McGinn's light on. Councillor Williams. No, Councillor Horville. Sorry, Councillor Horville.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, the debate we're having in workshop is very instructive, and I thank everyone who's contributed. We have I'm just making the point that Crescent Head is certainly changing, and I think Councillor Baxter would certainly affirm this, that we've got a huge issue with the number of people who are investing in the village. $2.6 million house was sold last week for that amount of money, and there's incredible investment going on in the area. So we've got to make sure that we have a plan that's going to have community consensus, and the way you fix that is by talking to people and communicating, not making a arbitrary decision and say this is the only option we're going to go with. So I commend what Councillor Patterson's put forward today, and I really do think that we've got to look to the future, and it's going to be a not an easy path, but it has to be taken. We've got to consult and really get a consensus and bring the whole community together, because it is a real issue for the people of Crescent Head.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also agree with the amendment. But one thing I just wanted to mention too, though, that most of us have sat here for 9 years or more, and through the consultation periods, we've probably realised that a lot of the time, a lot of people don't talk until there's actually plans or there's a decision to be made. So I think that extra consultation is important, and especially with issues like this, and we've done it in the past. And as I said, some of those people just don't speak until we're proposing potentially to take something away that they may not have even known about. And we say, yes, we know that it's happening, but not everybody looks at council reports, and not everybody, is that invested in that until such things happen. But the only thing I just had a question is the wording right around a council development group? I don't know if that should be a community working group that includes members of council. I don't know. That's just an idea. I just didn't know which way we should go there.
Actually, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Williams, that was one of the questions I had when I was going to get my turn to speak. So what I would like to say too is that we did have a lot of consultation and engagement, but sometimes when you do that engagement, something gets missed by either someone, something just doesn't come up as being, you know, top of mind until, like you said, the decisions are out there and it's on public display. I don't believe with the first recommendation that we've got the balance right between the open space that people want. We understand that came through loud and clear. Car spaces and the surf culture, which is really important for the way that the surf people have integrated with Crescent Head, and they've always been able to coexist with every other visitor that comes to Crescent Head. The other thing that we haven't probably taken into account as much, but we did when we did the caravan parks and whenever we've had any consultation or any changes to Crown land, is the understanding that it's not just for locals, it's also for visitors. And we've had a lot of engagement or communication with people from all over the world actually on this issue. So that also needs to be taken into consideration. I actually don't mind the suggestion of a working group going forward, but I would like to hear from the General Manager around what we've sort of started to talk about so far. Does that give any clear direction to the staff and how he sees what we've kind of got on the board now as a direction to our staff?
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, it's certainly starting to. There's a number of points I'd like to just get clarified so staff are clear on it, and I might just go through those one at a time and have you as councillors clarify that. When you talk about the report number of parks on the foreshore, what do you mean by foreshore? Is that the area that is currently under black seal? Is it further along, going up further along the foreshore? Is it a reduction of that? What do you actually mean by foreshore? Okay. So we might want to put in there a number of car parks on the existing foreshore. Yep, car park.
Are we getting really prescriptive? Because what I've written down is at this point I don't have a preferred option. I don't think we're there yet. But how prescriptive do we want to be to our staff?
Well, the staff need to know what you mean by foreshore. The foreshore there literally runs from in front of the surf club all the way up to Little Nobby. We can put car parks all the way along there, no issues. Well, there are a few issues, but we can do that. So what we want to know is if you're talking about the maximum number of car parks on the foreshore, are we talking about just what's currently the car park or the whole foreshore? So we do need to have that clarified.
While balancing the green space, you know, so to me,
yeah,
it's
wouldn't that come out of any discussion?
You know, without,
well, that's my next question.
Yeah.
Without being exactly prescriptive, the hold, not the hold up, but the issue that we've lost here is captured further down here in the recognise the surf culture of Crescent Head. Now that's I suppose in that question, General Manager, that's probably something that we're missed, that surf culture, even though that you know, surfing's done out in the water, but the surf culture has something to do with the landscape of it, where the parking is. You know, if we had a design that maximised the number, which it says there, maximises the number could be, like I said before, it could be 25, it could be 66. But, you know, surely you could come back to us with designs, and it may be like Councillor Baxter said, you know, we've seen 6 designs. We could see another 3 or 4 designs that actually does that.
So what I'm taking is you're talking about the current car park area is what we've got to look at.
Well, that's not how I read it, so I can understand
that's why we want it sorted out.
There is confusion, because when I think of foreshore, I think of the entire point, really, like as in the caravan park, the current car park, both facing the ocean. So I think of it as the area holistically, and that's how I see the foreshore. The foreshore isn't just the number of car parks that exist that are under tar that face the ocean at the moment. That's not what I see. Foreshore.
Is it from the surf club through to the current western boundary of the holiday park or to the eastern boundary of the holiday park, or is it up to the foot of Little Knob?
Well, that's something that we haven't discussed, and which I'd like to put back to you guys. Is, you know, the long term, the outlook on, you know, have we got possibilities of manipulating the caravan park / Crown land? You know, have we looked in those options and design? And that's something that, you know, we need to see if it's able, because like you said before, nothing's impossible. It's just a bit harder. So is it that we have to wait for 2027 when the lease comes back up for the caravan park, that things are manipulated a little bit for the betterment of the caravan park and the betterment of the users of the car park? So I don't think we need to be that prescriptive. When we say foreshore, we mean the foreshore that looks at the, you know, the foreshore, the whole area that we're actually designing at the moment.
For example, that leads into another question that I would need clarified, is what's in and what's out. So you are wanting us to look at the holiday park and the club grounds and the golf course. You're wanting us to look at that whole area.
I'm not.
What you're saying?
I'm not.
Yes and a
That's
no.
No from me.
Well, if you look at the design that was put forward by the traffic management report, the 2019 traffic management report, you'll see that they actually suggest taking that little strip of road that's at the eastern boundary of the caravan park. So
and council's already resolved the holiday park plans. So do you now want us to reverse that?
No, we're just talking about, as Councillor Patterson said, we're looking at the lease on the caravan park. But we're looking at all the possibilities. All the possibilities.
Okay. Can just ask another question, and then I'll put a bit of a suggestion to you. I think I might be the easiest way to do it. Another question, maximum number of car parks. Are you talking about the maximum number of car parks we can physically put in, or the maximum number of car parks as recommended by this community advisory group that you're wanting to establish? Which one? The maximum we can put in, or the maximum by the advisory group? Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, I'll continue, and then I'm going to take Councillor Morris, and then.
Can I suggest that you may want to, and the other issue this hasn't addressed at all is the budget and how we're actually going to do this. Can I suggest you ask us to bring back a report to the August council meeting outlining the scope of the engagement for delivering new plans within the next 24 months. So we bring back a report next month, would actually outline the scope. Based on some of these discussions, it would put in the budget, it would suggest what you take out of this current year's operational plan, and that could be things like the detailed design for Horseshoe Bay or Riverside Park, it could be Flying Fox stuff, it could be a whole range of things. We'll need to work out what we pull out of the budget to put this into the budget and into the workload, but we can actually bring that back next month. And that would actually outline to do the engagement and the concept design you're asking for. You're talking there somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. So that's what you're talking about, and you're talking about a period that's really going to extend for 12 to 24 months. So we need to actually allow and factor that in to the staff workload, and the best way to do that is for us to bring back a considered report next month for you to actually make that decision. But going based on this would be quite clearly that you want something different, you want something within the next 2 years, but you don't want it in the next 3 months. And certainly it's not going to take that time. You want a community advisory group formed as part of it, made up of a wide range of people. So we could actually set that all out in a report that we can bring back to you next month.
So it would give you more certainty and direction.
Absolutely.
Councillor Morris. I'll just let everyone think on that, and we'll hear what Councillor Morris has to say. Sorry, Councillor Morris, we can't hear you. We need your microphone.
I've turned it on about 8 times since I put my hand up, and it's been turned off about 8 times.
Councillor Morris,
continually.
if I can just jump in there, Councillor Morris, we hear your breathing, so it is actually turned off here. So your breathing comes through really clearly over the microphone, so we do continually turn it off.
If I take my headset off, it doesn't. But if I got my headset on, that's what happens. And it's quite frustrating because I've turned it on about 8 times since I've had my hand up and I've been ignored, and other people have just interjected in from the chamber. But that's beside the point. What I believe we need to be looking at doing.
Point of order, that's been quite rude.
That is why we ask councillors when they're not speaking to turn their microphones off.
I honestly believe we need to be looking at taking the word balancing the need for maximising the number of car parks and changing it to balancing the need for car parks on the foreshore with the need for green space. The need for the number, we shouldn't have maximising in there because that says that we want the most number of car parks possible, and then you're not balancing it, you're prioritising the car parks. The need for car parks on the foreshore while balancing the need for green space.
Yeah, I agree with that. Does anyone else need?
I'd agree with that.
You do?
So the need for car parks on the foreshore while balancing the need for green space. So the word, the number, and the before it. You've already got the need for. While balancing the need for green space. So that says that you want car parks on the foreshore while balancing the need for green space. If you have the word maximising, it just that throws it all out. The rest of it, I think, is okay. Now, what was the second question you had, Mr. General Manager?
There is the suggestion that we somehow in this put in that we actually bring a report back to the next council meeting outlining the scope and the engagement plan, the budget, and what budget assistance will need to be made.
And of course, that engagement strategy could include, which I believe is the important first step, is an upfront survey of the community to ascertain, and as was stated previously, it's quite often that people don't really get engaged until they see what's likely to come up, and then they feel that they're being impacted, so therefore they're more likely to be engaged. Now is the time to engage as quickly as possible to find out what the desires of the community are. Do they want option 4? Do they want the existing car parking on the foreshore retained? Do they want more parking or do they want less? And a quick survey with 3 options and a number, which could be included in that report in August, I think is an important first step.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Patterson, you've got your light on.
Yeah.
You did call me.
Oh, sorry, I did. So, Councillor McGinn, then Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was only going to add, so another point. So these could be point 2 and 3 there. I was going to have point 1 that acknowledged the significant community consultation to date, because in working this up, I didn't want to lose the fact that we've come to a point because we have done significant community consultation. Although we're about to tweak it and go out again, by the look of it, it's still important to recognise that there have been community members who have given a lot to get this far.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn, and I think that's recognised in the fact that what came out of that engagement was the green space and open space was much valued.
So, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
Just asking my fellow councillors now that they think about the wording of this.
I'll take you next.
That we can actually, the wording that the General Manager suggested to bring it back to the next meeting in August about bringing us a budget to conduct these changes for the future report to come back to council in approximately 24 months. So like, I really don't want to be giving council sort of false starts all the time and playing with reports coming back and forth. I think the council have done a fantastic job, and we're in the area at the moment there that we need just some more consultation. We need some more time. And with that second part there, that we're going to bring back to the council meeting present consultation scope and how it will be delivered. How will the work be funded and impacts on the operational plan? So that's something that's definitely achievable for us for next meeting, and then we move forward with a plan that's budgeted, and our council can work upon that for the next 24 months approximately.
What we've actually just done is we just changed the word development to advisory group there. So a community advisory group, not a council advisory group.
Yes.
Could I have a question on that, Madam Mayor, please?
Yes, Councillor Hawble. Just a moment before you speak, just so that I can ask Councillor Morris. Sometimes I know that you do get missed because putting a hand up and the way the screen's set up, this is not ideal. So Councillor Hawble just interjected a little bit and said he wanted to speak, and I could hear him then. So I'm quite okay if you just interject if you want to speak for the future. Yes, Councillor Hawble.
Yeah, just to the General Manager, Madam Mayor, the Community Advisory Group, would it be considered to be a council committee with people invited onto it for as an ad hoc committee for the term of this? Should it be a community, a council committee?
Through Madam Mayor, no, it would just be a community advisory group, the same as we have other community advisory groups. So we're looking at what you've got there. We'd be asking for members of the community to put their hand up through ratepayers, surfing groups, community groups, business owners. I imagine you mean residents as well. And we'd actually look at that as well. We did an advisory group as an example for the bushfire funding that worked very, very well. So, yeah, so it would be an advisory group of that nature.
So interest to join?
Yeah, we'd go out to the community and ask for people to put their hands up for it.
I think we've had the same with the sustainability group.
Yeah, and also the Kempsey Airport Reference Group.
Yes.
So we've got a history of doing these sorts of things. So
I've just got a question, if I may. I just had a question of Councillor Morris, actually. The sentence that you had at the bottom, consider the concept design for the playground to ensure it will fit. I think if in part 3 where it says for the need green space, the playground design and a skate park design, just to be thorough there, that pulls in Councillor Morris's point there. And then rather than having at the moment in the commentary at the bottom that Bruce added about the upfront survey, let's leave that till we discuss about how we're going to have the consultation scope, so that actually we can scope out what that's going to look like at that point, rather than this is if Bruce thought that was appropriate.
I mean, just add one other there, just that after the playground design, skate park design and location, and then overall concept design.
Councillor Hawble? He's on. I'm sorry. Thank you, Councillor Hawble. You were on.
Let's make on point 2 as well. Present the it's actually an engagement scope, not necessarily consultations. It's actually an engagement.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Hawble.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had my hand up by mistake, and I apologise for not taking it down.
Oh, no, that's okay.
So, Madam Mayor, I just have one quick question.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
The community advisory group, that'd be led by council, obviously, or not obviously there'll be community members, and there'll be staff there.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, we'll
No,
bring
get
this
that
back
up there,
to the
so-
August, should you adopt this, we'll bring this back to the August council meeting, and certainly staff and consultants would need to be involved in that, because we'd actually be looking at appointing consultants to facilitate this.
No, I understand. I just wanted to
Yeah.
put that out there. The other thing is, I think that we can cut down a couple of words in there, but just the playground and skate park designs and locations, rather than and. If that makes sense in number 3.
English was no.
Not real good at English either, but the playground and, or I reckon it could be the playground and skate park designs and locations.
Well,
So the playground and skate park design. So you don't need playground design and skate park design. It's or do you want to separate
except
them so
that it's thorough, Madam
Yes.
Mayor, and it does
Yeah,
note
okay,
the
yeah.
playground design as having an extra look
Agree.
at it. So I think it's important that it is
separated? Yes, because they could be completely different.
Can I just ask another question as well,
Yes.
if I may, Madam Mayor? The part that says recognises the surf culture, that's pulled out very specifically. You've also got Dungutty culture, you've also got the broader community using that. There's a whole culture of just picnics and walking and observing and looking. Do you want to have a sole emphasis on surf culture?
Could it be that it recognises the different cultures of Crescent Head?
the complementary culture.
Or do we just take it out altogether? I think what we're trying to acknowledge is that in that initial community consultation, maybe that surfing culture didn't come through as strongly as what it is now that the actual concept design is out. So I think we may not have to even have anything regarding a specific culture. But I'm thinking
No,
we
because
maybe
we're looking
did
at
address
Crescent
it.
Head in a totality.
You got to take it out.
I take it out altogether and then let the group
In an overall concept design,
develop what
community
their
advisory
plans, and that will come through then.
group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do need to point that out. I mean, that's something that we. One of the big cultures at Crescent Head is the surf culture.
Councillor Morris has got his hand up, so he may be able to help here. Councillor Morris.
I think something needs to be left there, whether you specifically mention the surf culture or whether you say the overall concept design that recognises the various cultures evident within Crescent Head.
Yeah.
I think the balance, I agree with Councillor Morris, in an overall concept design developed by a community advisory group.
But I
Surely-
think you need to still have that bit in there to say that you are recognised, that you recognise the various cultures, and you could put in there in brackets the surfing culture, because that was one that was missed previously, or you could just leave it out altogether, or that appears to have been missed previously.
Yeah.
It does say, though, the advisory group includes members of the most relevant groups, and then it goes on to say ratepayers, surfing community. So they're mentioned, community groups, business owners, and it probably should say tourism as well, and others.
Tourism operators.
They
So
still,
that you have,
still recognise the Dungutty consideration of the area too. That should be in there somewhere.
Surf culture and culture.
yeah, you probably don't need the surf culture in the middle of that sentence, because you're then starting to list the relevant groups in the community advisory group which represent the various parts of the community. It says surfing community there now.
We have the dog walking group as well, and the walkers.
The dog
And
walking group, they are a subset of the ratepayers.
Yeah, true. And anyway, anyone can put in an expression of interest.
But I'd be inclined to move Dungutty closer to the front of the list.
So would I.
Yep, I agree.
Wouldn't be okay for a break.
Councillor Shields, you had something to say?
Madam Mayor, I'd be inclined not to list specific groups or anything like that for fear of missing people. I think it will come out through the expressions of interest anyway, and we don't need to tell council how to do their job in terms of determining who should be on this community advisory group. I don't think it really matters.
Could be such as groups such as.
I don't even think we need to put any. I agree with you.
Should we change the word group to stakeholders? Relevant stakeholders.
Well, we've already recognise the various cultures of Crescent Head, developed through a community advisory group, full stop. And continue to keep the community engaged through this process.
I think, Madam Mayor, we should retain that list because it ends with "and others." We actually should be telling the people we want to listen to everyone, and that list is certainly saying here is the people that would be invited to be part of the community advisory group. So, and others, if there's any other stakeholders.
By being there, it might prompt people from those groups to put in an expression of interest. If it's not there, we may miss somebody.
I don't think it hurts being there, although it is redundant.
Yeah, leave it there.
But it does promote people in those groups to put their hands up.
Yeah. Yeah, in hindsight, you're right. Okay, what are we doing? Have I got any lights on? I have, Councillor Williams.
I move we move back into open council.
Second that.
Moved by Councillor Williams, second by Councillor McGinn and Shields, but I'll just have to take one, so I'll take Councillor McGinn. Is there any dissent in moving to Councillor? No.
Do I move amendment?
Madam Mayor, do I speak to my original motion? That's been ignored.
You may speak. We're going back into open council. We're not putting up the amendment yet, so you could speak to your original motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Something you heard.
Council, Madam Mayor.
Yes, we are, and Councillor Saul is speaking to the original motion before we put up an amendment.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I wish to have my 2 cents worth now with the issue. Madam Mayor, I move this original motion as read on the screen, plus in our agendas. Madam Mayor, we've actually come to a stage where we've had significant consultation in the Crescent community, and I think if we continue to go back, you're going to have what you call fatigue consultation, because people were tired of giving their all and then almost being dismissed because the group didn't like what's been prescribed and wants to change it all again. Now, that may be controversial, but that's my feeling. Madam Mayor, the communities who wanted option 4 and have spoken very widely through email, through phone calls, are saying it is a good design and let's get on and do something. Green space is important for Crescent Head, and the idea of having that has certainly got people excited. I mean, many people say when they picture town green,
Seems to have lost volume as Councillor Saul lapsed or
Can't hear.
can't hear anything. Okay.
have dropped out, Bruce?
Yeah, they've lost the stream. They're doing something to fix it. I just rang Craig.
Right. See the chamber again. Can they hear us?
Yeah, we're back online.
I don't. We lost when Councillor Saul was staying to speak.
Was my speech heard or ignored?
No, I'd like to hear it again.
Oh.
You dropped out mid-sentence.
Guys, that's like the big money, mate.
We've got it right this time.
Oh my goodness. Isn't that... I was all worked up and
Councillors,
Do it 6 times.
I'll have to take 2.
do you want me to use the gavel? Order, please. Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll have to repeat myself for the live stream. Madam Mayor, now I've had to work up again. The point is, Madam Mayor, we've had consultation on this issue at Crescent Head. They've had meetings with community groups, with school children, and many others who really have given much of their time and effort to have the situation come to a fore, which we now have as option 4. Now, if we dismiss that and say, no, we're not quite happy with this, let's go out and start again, it can lead to fatigue of consultation. I mean, I know myself, if you keep having to go back and repeating yourself continually, it gets frustrating. But the point is very much a case of, my biggest fear is if we don't have the green space that we're after, because Town Green and Port Macquarie was a matter where people really who spoke to me and emailed said they liked that situation, and how nice it would be for Crescent Head to have a similar situation with the Town Green and Port Macquarie. We have green space to walk through for families to sit there, watch the surf, to enjoy the amenity of the area and the village and the beauty of the surroundings. The point is, if we again go back and ask for more consultation, ask for more groups, 2 things could happen. One, the people who did give their time and effort may not be bothered next time because they feel it's been fruitless for the first time. And if the surfing culture is a defining factor in it, many may not want to be a part of that group. We don't want to have fatigue. We don't want to have people who feel they have been actioned and now have been sidelined. So, Madam Mayor, the design for option 4 has been out in the community, and people have said how nice it is. It is a good area for parking. We're increasing our parking area. It still allows green space where the other car park had been, and I do believe it could be the winner we're after. Madam Mayor, finally, it's expense. We have been through so much with consultants employed by this council to do such with the first group. It now may be just wiped and start again. We are continually having asked the ratepayers to fund a situation, and even our own staff time, which is expensive at times, to go back and rehash and rehash and rehash. The ratepayers want value for money. They don't want something that's going to have to be at the whim of others, put out. We're trying the bathe with the bathwater. Let's stick to what we have. We have an option here. It has been in the Crescent community by the quiet, silent majority who have said, yes, let's go for this. And if we do think of them, we will go for the original motion. Thank you for that.
Madam Mayor, I've got a foreshadowed motion.
Amendment.
Amendment. I'll second the amendment.
Hang on a moment. Thank you. I'll take that. I'll take your foreshadowed. I have then got. I'll need a seconder for that.
I actually.
Councillor Morris has
it.
Yeah, you've got an amendment, Councillor. Another amendment, Councillor Morris. Is that what you're saying, or are you seconding?
I said I'll second it if
Thank
everybody else.
So I'm going to take Councillor Patterson as amendment. I'm going to take Councillor Morris as the seconder. I have then and then you may speak to it, Councillor Patterson. I have Councillor McGinn who wants to speak. Then I have Councillor Horval.
Seconding of the original motion. Can I do that?
Can't. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't make any difference. Okay, so what we've got the amendment that you're going to move. I'll read it. Councillor Morris has seconded it. Then I'll take Councillor Horval. So what? Oh, I'll let you speak to it first. But what we have here is that Council acknowledges the significant community consultation to date, report back to the August 2021 Ordinary Council meeting to present the engagement scope and how it will be delivered, how will the work be funded and impacts to the Operational Plan 2021-2022, bring a further report back to Council in approximately 24 months with more options, balancing the need for car parks on the foreshore while balancing the need for green space, the playground design, the skate park design and a location overall concept design that recognises the various cultures of Crescent Head, developed through a community advisory group including members of the most relevant groups, Dunguddy, ratepayers, surfing community, community groups, business owners, tourism and others, and continue to keep the community engaged throughout this process. So, Councillor Patterson, you may speak to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Your amendment.
Sorry. I've put this amendment up. I also like to acknowledge all the work that Council and Council staff has done leading up to this point, and also want to acknowledge all my fellow councillors who have been very diligent in working through this matter in a very respectful way. And we come to a point where I believe that we need that extra time. We need to get this development right. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but what will happen tomorrow is we'll move forward with a design for the whole area, and using those community groups, community culture groups. I do believe that us as councillors will come to a point, and actually it will be going into the next council of the Kempsey Shire that will be there to move this forward. So I put this towards my fellow councillors to support this motion and move forward with our community of Crescent Head, that we do need to recognise those user groups, Dunguddy, ratepayers, and mainly the surfing community, I believe, that are users of this area. And I put this towards my fellow councillors for support.
Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to speak against the original motion that Councillor Saul put up, but I guess in one way I'm speaking in favour of this amendment, in that there was talk about the cost to council in going down this path.
Have you got a question? Because otherwise you'd have to speak against the amendment. So have you got a question?
No, I was going to speak in favour of Councillor Patterson, Madam Mayor.
We've had once. We need a speaker against. Thank you, Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, I'm not speaking for or against. I'm just asking for a small change. When you read it out, it became quite obvious that we've got two balancing in the same sentence.
Yeah.
We need to remove one of them. It should be with more options balancing the need for car parks on the foreshore and the need for green space. We shouldn't have balancing car parks while balancing green space. We should have one balancing.
Thank you.
While balancing.
Does that look better?
Hasn't changed. As now.
Yep. Okay. Is there any dissent on the on the amendment? Thank you, Councillor Saul. The amendment now becomes the motion. Is there any dissent on the motion? Councillor Saul. The motion has passed. Thank you, councillors. We will now leave and adjourn for morning tea. So if we come back at 10:02. Thank you, councillors. This live stream is live, and if you're in the room, councillors, that means you need to be able to vote. But at this stage, we haven't got anything on the board. Councillor Horval and Councillor Morris are back with us, and we'll go to item 9.2, which is the biodiversity strategy for Kempsey Shire. There is a recommendation that we approve the draft biodiversity strategy for the Kempsey Shire to proceed to public exhibition
Move that one.
and receive a further report at the conclusion of the public exhibition period. It's been moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Shields.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
That motion to move it was while you were speaking. I don't think people should speak while you're reading.
My apologies, Madam Mayor.
Councillor, I upheld it, and Councillor Patterson just apologised.
Thank you. I was hoping to move a slight amendment, but thank you.
So Councillor Shields seconded it. You would like to move an amendment? And then I've got Councillor Morris has also got his hand up.
Right. The slight one would be to put in there a specific date for the proceed to public exhibition for 42 days, Madam Mayor. I'll take advice from the General Manager on whether that specific number of days would be appropriate.
Manager?
Through Madam Mayor, the proposal at the moment is to put it out for 28 days. If Council wishes us to put it out for longer, we can. It will push back the time frame for when it will come back to Council.
Thank you. Councillor Morris?
Madam Mayor, I was planning on moving a similar amendment, given that last night Megan Jones, who gave us a workshop on this matter, said that it was likely to come back to Council in October or November, and maybe as late as December. I think that given the current restrictions with face-to-face contact and the fact that the last Macleay situation was in 2019 with this, it would be beneficial for the community to be given that extra little bit of time. 42 days shouldn't push it back past December, which is already a possibility. So I would like to second Councillor Horval's amendment.
Through Madam Mayor, you can either make an amendment or we just take it on board. It's 42 days, and because we haven't actually specified it there anyway, so we can actually put it on exhibition for 42 days.
Madam Mayor, I asked my fellow councillors what they think as well. Yep, got a nod, put it in. Thank you.
The mover has agreed that they will accept that into the recommendation, Councillor Horval. 42 days.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. But I'd also like to ask some questions, if that's possible, please.
Absolutely.
May I do that now? Or?
Yes, unless the mover wants to speak to the motion. Yes, Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 20 of the report, it talks about halfway down stakeholder engagement. It talks about the feedback received by the Your Say Macleay survey indicated the community places a high level of importance on 1, protection of vegetation from further activities that lead to a loss or change of habitat, and 2, the retention of biodiversity offsets where necessary within Kempsey Shire LGA. My question is there any numbers on that feedback, whether how many people put in that they expect protection of vegetation and so forth in that feedback on Your Say Macleay? Do we have any numbers or percentages of support?
General Manager.
Madam Mayor, I don't have those on hand. I don't think Mr. Fish has those. I'm not sure.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. It's listed in the dot points above that. The online platform where the discussion paper was available had 239 visits and 48 individuals participated in the online survey. Those couple of dot points that you've outlined there, Councillor Horval, I guess provide a broad summation of some of the feedback that was received through those 48 participations.
My second question on this particular matter, if this biodiversity strategy was in operation now, would that affect in any way the next item on the business paper, which is the impact of a development in the buffer zone? Would that inform how council would have dealt with that development application?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's a moot point. It's actually not there before council, and it's not relevant to the next report.
But if it was, Mr. General Manager, my question was, what sort of impact has this strategy have in the planning department? Not just this particular one, or the DA, but how overriding is it to what happens in planning?
It's a key instrument in the consideration, and as was discussed in the briefing yesterday, what it provides is some certainty for developers in terms of what they will need to look at and consider as they proceed with any development.
Okay, and finally, reading the biodiversity strategy, I couldn't see any advice on, well, maybe it is there, but I might have missed it, means to educate the public, to monitor the implementation of the strategy and implement compliance. So it goes to the long-term benefit of having the strategy. Is there any compliance along with the idea that if there is an error, which I raised before, and a developer goes ahead with activities that are not complying, what compliance is in this strategy that will make them restore the environment to what it was?
Thank you, Mr. Fish.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Part 3.1 of the draft strategy basically outlines the role of Kempsey Shire Council, and certainly regulatory functions are listed in that as a key action of councils as part of its operational requirements. So there are some functions listed there. Ultimately, the strategy is a high level guidance document which has, some underlying principles. There are a number of other strategies that support this document or further inform development controls and have additional detail and guidance. Where we have matters that are, compliance related, there is relevant legislation that applies where we undertake those compliance actions, and we would obviously enforce in accordance with that relevant legislation. So it would depend on the given matter at hand and the nature of the non-compliance.
So if I could follow up a question there, Director Fish, if I may. In the future, a development application specifies retaining certain trees in a subdivision, say, and they knock down all the trees. What compliance or actions could council take in that circumstance, other than besides what's already existing? Is this new biodiversity strategy got more compliance requirements on the developer?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, the strategy provides for consideration in planning functions, and the strategy is quite clear in terms of outlining the need for a balance. It would depend on the given situation, so that a consent may be issued for the clearing of an area, but you would need to look at it on a case-by-case basis and what the applicable consent is, or what the application that is at hand, and assess it on the merit of the individual location.
And if there are any penalties, financial, Director Fish, who determines those? Is it court, or has council got authority to impose fines?
Councillor Hall, we're actually off the subject with these questions. It's actually not relevant to what council's got about putting this on public exhibition. If you've got more detailed questions about compliance matters, just contact the director directly.
Okay, I apologise, Mr. General Manager. I was just seeing whether anything more needs to be added to this strategy before we put it on exhibition. So obviously I'm not allowed to do that.
Through Madam Mayor, that is not what I said, Councillor Horval. Your questions were not in relation to the draft there. They were about compliance matters and people being fined and the volumes of those fines. That is not about what this strategy is about.
And I will remind councillors that we need to focus on the recommendation. There has been no amendment to the recommendation. The recommendation is, and what we're discussing here, is to approve the draft biodiversity strategy for the Kempsey Shire to proceed to public exhibition. So the draft that we have to proceed to public exhibition and to receive a further report at the conclusion of the public exhibition period. No, we've changed that. To approve the exhibition period for 42 days. It's on the board. So thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge Megan Jones, Environmental Planning Officer, for developing this draft biodiversity strategy for the Kempsey Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Okay, is there any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent. That has been carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now go to 9.3, which is the Kempsey CBD flood planning. There is a recommendation that council adopts the amended Kempsey Development Control Plan 2013, Chapter B7, Flood Hazard Area Management, and endorse the flood mapping and have it made accessible to the public through council's website. This control plan, I think, was put on public. It's just coming back for adoption. Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Seconded by Councillor Baxter.
Can I ask a couple of questions, Chair?
Yes, certainly.
On page 24 of the flood planning report there, on page 24, on the third paragraph there, it says this flood hazard management, the first sentence says, has been amended to reflect updated flood modelling. Does that, do we imply by that the flood levels are higher now than they were in the 2013, the last report we had?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. As part of the CBD flood study, detailed flood modelling was undertaken, which is obviously more robust than modelling previously undertaken. That flood modelling mapping is being reflected through this DCP and will be further updated in the future should there be better modelling become available. And obviously our network of modelling that we have we're obviously seeking to expand that. We've done the Lower Macleay flood study, which is in the secondary stages now with the flood risk management study and flood risk management plan. And once that is done, likely the updated modelling done for the Lower Macleay would ultimately be incorporated into the DCP. But at this point in time, it's the CBD flood study modelling that's coming into the DCP, and that modelling will be available. We outlined this previously when it was initially at council back in April to go on exhibition. The changes to the flood levels are not that great. They're quite minimal. There's some ups and downs, so there's not a considerable change, I guess, in areas of flood affected lands through the revised modelling.
Thank you, Director.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two questions, please. First off, will the new CBD flood planning have effect? How will it affect on development and current use in residential, commercial, and industrial?
Yep. Through you, Madam Mayor, I might broadly go through the changes to the DCP for you just to assist in, I guess, understanding that impact. We've just touched on, obviously, the flood mapping. So that's the first main change, that new flooding from the CBD flood study, flood modelling from the CBD flood study is incorporated into the DCP. The second part of the amendments to the DCP relate to development control measures, and those measures came out of the flood risk management study and management plan, which Council adopted previously, and this DCP, or revised DCP, acts upon that. And the key component of those development control measures relates to flood risk, and I guess the associated planning controls and measures to manage that risk, in particular to life and also to property. So the key changes within the document, I'll just go through them broadly. Previously, we've had the DCP, but we've also had a council procedure. This revised DCP consolidates those into the one document, which makes it much simpler. In terms of the changes, the key things are around emergency response provisions, which supports the LEP clauses that you adopted last month, or that was part of the mandatory clause and also the optional clause. And those emergency response provisions are about ensuring that adequate flood control measures, evacuation planning and refuge are being considered and implemented for particularly sensitive development. So focus on sensitive development such as residential care facilities, group homes and accommodation for people with disabilities. So the change to emergency response provisions relates to particular development which is sensitive in terms of the use. The other changes relates to particularly to the floodways. Currently there are 7 floodways identified. With the new DCPs, there are now 2 floodways within the Kempsey CBD, with other areas that were previously floodways becoming flood storage, fringe or backwater areas. And what that means for those 2 floodways, they are actually shown in Annexure 1 and 2 of the DCP document, so you can see the areas that are affected by those 2 floodways for the CBD area. What the amended development control measures provide for those 2 floodways is much the same as what we've already had in place, but with there will be no longer permissions for extensions to existing dwellings or the conversion of existing dwellings to multi-residential land uses. I would note it's important that you look at those 2 annexures to see where those mapping impacts. If you look at the key floodway through the Kempsey CBD, the majority of that land is zoned E2 environmental conservation or RE1 public recreation, and a lot of the area is sporting fields already, so obviously it's not used for a commercial or residential purpose. So those 2, there is some changes obviously for those 2 floodway areas, but as I said, very important to look at the mapping of those areas through the 2 annexures. For those areas that are flood precincts, the development controls do permit extensions. So there are areas that are flood storage or of the like that are not actual hydraulic floodways, and there are extensions to developments permitted in those areas, subject to conditions. The final thing within the DCP, the main change would relate to flood-proofing measures, which relates to recommended building materials, and the DCP now has some guidance to ensure that obviously development in applicable areas are more resilient to flood events and obviously can be assisted in or more quickly cleaned up or repaired, obviously post-flood events. So they're the main changes are those couple of items related to the floodways. But as I said, it's important to obviously have a look at the areas that are impacted via those 2 floodways in those annexures 1 and 2 of the revised DCP.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One more question. Thank you. Has the existing levee banks been surrounding the CBD, have they been returned to design height, and is there a maintenance schedule on these?
Councillor, I need to take you back to what the recommendation is. We're adopting the Kempsey Development Control Plan, which is not operational around flood mitigation, and endorse the flood mapping. but the director is happy to answer that at a later date.
Thank you, Madam.
Is there any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent on the recommendation. That's been passed. We go to item number 9.4, which is a planning proposal. There is a recommendation.
Move that way, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Saul. It's been seconded by Councillor McGinn. Do you wish to speak?
No, Madam Mayor. I think it's fairly straightforward in the report. Thank you.
No one wishes to speak. I put the any dissent?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councillor Horville.
I'd like to ask a question about the attached document, please.
Yes, certainly.
The 9.4.8 state agency response to amended proposal, the BCD. I have to bring it up. On page 3 of the document, at the bottom, the state agency says possible unauthorised work on E2 land. It says recent aerial imagery indicates that works have been undertaken in the E2 land. See figure 3 below. These potentially unauthorised works should be investigated by the council and suitable action taken. This may require removal of any fill and revegetation. Could council be updated on what has happened in regard to that recommendation, please?
Councillor, Director Fish.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Hall will take that question on notice and provide a response accordingly.
So no one from council.
Councillor Horville, your question has just been answered. Have you got another question?
Yes, I have another question, Madam Mayor. Has anyone been out to see whether the roadway in that aerial photograph is to the northernmost area of the subdivision, the new subdivision? And is this work that's presupposing that be allowed? Has anyone from council been out to inspect that roadway?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure. I think you might be referring to the road that you can see that's been constructed there. There has been that area has been rezoned and subsequent development consent's been issued, and obviously that consent's been acted on with the extension of the road and the creation of the lots that are around that.
Okay. Mr. General Manager, may I ask you, please? If there's been unauthorised work on the development area, should council proceed with this until we find out for sure?
Through Madam Mayor, the issue before council is about a planning proposal. If there's any compliance matters, that is totally separate, so therefore there's nothing stopping council from making this determination.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Councillor Morris. And then I'll take Councillor Baxter.
Madam Mayor, I just ask for some clarification as to whether this is additional R5 or additional subdivision, or whether we are simply changing a lot layout within an existing approved subdivision. I'm not sure. The way it's worded, it says it's proposed additional. In other places it says there's 11, 12, 13 and 14 that's already approved. So is this a change to the lot layout with a reduction in the number of lots, or is it a new subdivision?
Mr. Fish.
Thank you, Director Fish.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Currently, this land is part of a much larger lot, so it's creating, I guess, the three new lots, the 11, 12 and 13. Previously, when the planning proposal came to council to seek gateway, it was a seeking for 4 lots through, I guess, discussion with the relevant agencies and the applicant, that has been revised to a 3-lot proposal for a variety of reasons. So, so it's seeking to create 3 lots at the location. Ultimately, the lots will be created as part of a DA. What the decision today is just around the zoning, which will obviously amend the minimum lot size and the applicable zoning to areas of that lot.
A further question is, when I look at the maps, there seems to be some differences of areas that are available for on-site sewerage, where the buffer zone is for the wetlands. Is the construction of new dwellings on these proposed allotments restricted to areas other than the buffer zone, or can they be built within the buffer zone? And how much actual area is there available for on-site sewerage management and construction if they can't be in the buffer zone on each of the proposed allotments? Because it seems to be quite small. Like the detail on the report isn't adequate to be able to read the figures, but given the size of the blocks, that the actual footprint available is seems quite small.
Yeah, through
clarification, because I just can't read the details on the maps to be able to make a proper judgment.
Yep. Through you, Madam Mayor, I guess firstly related to the proximity area or the buffer area to the wetlands, the State Environmental Planning Policy, Coastal Management that came in 2018, provides for, I guess, where development on land in proximity to coastal wetlands or littoral rainforest may occur. So there is a mechanism for consent for buildings within the proximity area, but that is subject to specific considerations as outlined within the State Environmental Planning Policy. And when it comes to the time for a DA, that will certainly be considered or factored in as part of the assessment of that DA. In terms of the on-site sewage disposal area, that needs to be located outside of the proximity area, which there is a few comments in the report that suggest that. Our officers in our environmental health area have provided advice on the proposal. The areas of land available for disposal area are of the order of 1,000 square metres on each of the lots, and the advice is that there are suitable areas outside of the 100-metre buffer to the wetland for on-site wastewater disposal on the proposed lots. So our expert advice is that there is sufficient area available, and obviously as these lots are ultimately developed, there will be DAs obviously done, and they'll be considered in more detail at that time, given the scale, with consideration of the scale of the development and obviously other factors.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question to the Director. Regarding the Barangi Co-op, the neighbour to this development, does the council have a responsibility to address the potential for a bushfire coming through that dense forest on the Barangi Co-op onto these developed lots? I mean, what I'm saying is, could we request an easement down one of the boundary lines to give access to that thick forest north of the development? Is that something within our scope or not?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the adjoining property is not part of the proposal, obviously before council, and that adjoining land has not enjoyed a legal road access to that land. It's really a matter between the owners of those, I guess, adjoining lands and the owners of the land subject to this current planning proposal. There's no compulsion to provide that secondary access to the Barangi cooperative lands, but yeah, it is a private matter for the two parties, and there would, with the creation of any access from Neville Morton Drive through to the Barangi per operative land, there would likely need to be some form of financial compensation, but that's a matter for the two landowners.
Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion, if I may.
Councillor.
And Madam Mayor, I move that we defer this matter until we have a site inspection by councillors.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Morris.
Do I speak to it, Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to be on the ground and see what's happened out there, because we're getting various bits of information and maps, as Councillor Morris said, aren't very clear in the numbers and things in the business paper report. I think seeing it and being shown around what's proposed and where sewage disposal and houses could go and how much of the buffer zone is impacting the three proposed blocks. If we could see that, I'm sure we would have a better idea on what we're voting on. I would suggest we defer this until we've had a site inspection, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a seconder. Do I have any dissent on the procedural motion? Is that a procedure? Can I just check? It is a procedural motion, yes, for deferment. Is there any dissent on the procedural motion? The procedural motion has been lost. I'm just not sure who dissented. I know I dissented. I didn't dissent, but so everybody else did. So the procedural motion has been lost. We go back to the original motion.
Madam Mayor, another procedural motion, please.
Thank you, Councillor Horval.
We defer this to the August meeting and wait a report from Director Fish on what's happening on the subdivision in relation to the report by the Biodiversity and Conservation letter.
I just call for a seconder first, and then I'll ask the General Manager to comment.
No seconder.
It's lapsed due to a seconder. So we're back to the original motion.
Madam Mayor, I'll speak against the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor.
A number of issues with this motion, Madam Mayor, has been highlighted that where we've put out a biodiversity strategy for comment, and it is alarming the number of species in our environment that are endangered or vulnerable. And here we are looking at approving a development that actually has land. All three blocks in this proposed subdivision have most of the land in the buffer zone for the wetlands. The wetlands need that buffer for very essential purpose of protecting the wetlands. So if the land is sold further down the track, we're going to have people possibly clearing, possibly going down and doing things in that land that they own, but it's in the buffer zone, and that activity could possibly affect that wetland environment, which we now know is quite endangered in most of the areas, and quite a few of the species that are contained in the wetland are endangered if we approve this. I'm also surprised that we are allowing a subdivision in an area where the code, the RT code, actually says that subdivision land must be a minimum of 10,000 square metres. And here we are approving ones that are 8,000 square metres, which is a huge reduction. And I can't see the purpose or the public benefit of having the size of the subdivision land reduced from 10,000 to 8,000. it's the only benefit will be that council will get once they're sold, get a extra ratepayer contributing to our funding. But I don't see any public benefit of having 3 blocks when 2 would be sufficient. So I'm.
This is about zoning, not blocks.
That's okay, Councillor. I won't uphold that. Continue, Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just finishing up saying that I'll be voting against it at the present time because I really see that we should have compliance by the developer to all impositions. And at the moment, it doesn't seem to be. I'd like that report. And also, we've got to maintain that buffer zone, which is there for a very important purpose, which is to protect the wetlands. And with nearly 2/3 of the subdivision being in the buffer zone, it's not going to be able to protect that area of the wetland very well. So I'd suggest we don't vote in support of this at this time.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No. Any dissent on the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Horville. It has been passed. We now move on to item 9.7, the quarterly report. There is a recommendation that the information be noted. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McGinn and Councillor Patterson seconded. It was brought out of the block for questions or to change or. So I believe Councillor Horville would like to ask questions or move an amendment. Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just some questions. We've got 2 LEP variations reported here, and I just so you all remember this, I voted against both of them. But with these variations being approved, does that set a precedent that the planning department then adopts as a new LEP allowed variation as a standard operating procedure?
No.
It does not. And as it is a planning matter, our those councillors voting for and against are recorded, Mr. General Manager, I believe, in a report.
Correct.
And that's on the website for any member of the public to inspect.
Correct.
So has that report that's on the website, has it got more sway or importance than the actual minutes of meetings? In other words, if there's an inaccuracy in that report, can that be amended 12 months after an event if there's a mistake found in that voting procedure by councillors?
If there's an error in the register, then yes, we will correct it.
Okay, good. Will I point that out now? I found one recently.
No, there's other avenues to actually undertake that, Councillor Horville, as you already know.
I just emailed you and you'll get it corrected. Thank you very much.
Has been answered, Councillor.
I'm just asking, it will be corrected if I send an email. Is that the best way to do it?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I have a, is there any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent. 9.7 has been carried. The next item is 11.1, which is a notice of motion.
10.
Oh, 10.2. Which is where?
That's
the first notice of motion. What is flooding?
Councillor Baxter, there is a notice of motion. You may read it as it is your report.
Fellow councillors, I'm putting forward this suggestion on the back of the Oh, I'll read
Or would you like me to read it?
I can read it.
Thank you.
I recommend to the staff undertaking the flood study, the Lower Macleay flood study at the moment, that they investigate the benefit of complete regeneration of the river's riparian zone and make the repair of the riparian zone for the length of the river a priority.
Just before you speak to it, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Councillor. I bring this before the Councillor's attention on the back of a report. You see at the bottom of the background there, in the report from Queensland Floods, it said that damage done to surrounding farmland, etc., which had healthy riparian zone, healthy forested riverbanks, the damage done to the area was a third of the damage done when the lost productivity of farmland, etc., where there was not healthy riparian zone. Now, I've heard many stories about the ongoing cost of the flood to farmland and houses, etc., up and down the river. And I'm thinking, given the quantity of grant funding that we're seeing coming out of federal and state government at the moment, I'm thinking this is a golden opportunity for us to revegetate the riverbanks and improve the health of our river, improve the health of it'll deepen the river. Where there's healthy riparian zone, you see the river 16 metres deep down near the bridge, whereas in other parts of the river it's 4 metres deep, very shallow, historically shallow at the moment. And most experts I talk to say a healthy riparian zone will deepen the river and will limit the damage from the floods that we regularly get. So I'm just thinking, as a flood mitigation measure, as a sensible preparation for the expected more severe floods, the CSIRO, the United Nations Intergovernmental Committee, and many expert groups around the world are expecting more severe flooding, more frequent flooding. And I'm thinking, as a way of getting ready for that, we should be revegetating the riverbanks, as we mentioned last year. But I'm thinking, given that this flood report was underway, I was thinking that if we could ask this flood committee or this flood report to look at the logistics of actually doing it, make that part of their report, and that would give us a better chance for getting grant funding and improve the health of the river. We seem to be just accepting the multi-million-dollar damage we get from these floods, these regular floods. Rather, I think if we spent $2 million preventing it, we might save $18 million in damages. Stitch in time saves 9. So that's my suggestion, that we ask the flood study that's going on at the moment to investigate the logistics. Like, where should where could we repair the riparian zone, and how much would it cost? And then our wonderful grants people can get the money to do it. So that's my recommendation to the council, to give that recommendation to the flood report people that are out there now, I think, doing the flood report. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question through to the General Manager on this issue. I note here in the General Manager's comments that the issue of the riparian management will be included in the pending Kempsey Shire LGA Coastal Zone Management Plan. When included, finalised, and once the CMT is certified by the Minister, funding from the various state federal programs may be available. So would this do any harm, General Manager? My question is, adopting this, just to highlight the fact that our riverbanks are being eroded fairly heavily by our constant flooding, and in here your comment is that it's going to happen anyway to this degree. Would there any difference in adopting this, General Manager?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, and Mr. Fish may add a little bit in this. We were actually already doing this, so there's actually no need for this in that sense. The issue you have with this is that you're talking about the entire river. If you want something, it's not something you can just simply slot into the current flood study. Like I said, we're already doing it anyway, and there may be potential funding come up. A lot of the land is private land, and there's issues around that. If you wanted to do this as a specific thing, then you'd need to actually again get it costed and work out when you wanted to have it done, what you're going to pull out of the current DPOP if you want to undertake that in this next 12 months. So that there are issues with it, yes. And Mr. Fish might want to add to that.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, if I could just add, as referenced in the General Manager's comment, the issue of riparian management will certainly be a flag through the Coastal Zone Management Plan program that we're currently working through, and an outcome of that program will be a list of actions prioritised for that will obviously provide benefit in the management of those zones. As I said, they will be prioritised, and once they're incorporated within the plan, there's ability to seek state and or potentially state and federal funding streams that may become available. But it's a matter of going through that process first, but certainly riparian management will be, a matter that would be flagged through that. But what the actual action will be determined through that process of development of the coastal management program.
Okay, Councillor McGinn and then Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that that Councillor Baxter is trying to do the right thing here, but the words in this recommendation are impossible to comply with. What is a complete regeneration is my first question. What actually is that? To when? Are we going back to forests? Are we going back to, like, what do you want? Grass where there's no grass? What do you mean by complete regeneration?
The word from the experts is that when it was a forested riverbanks, the river was deep, the river was healthy. So if you're looking at 50 or 100 metres in from the edge of the river, reforested.
So are you talking, sorry, just tell me what you're talking. So you're talking about your
reforesting.
Regeneration is reforestation 50 metres in from the river for the entire length of the Macleay River.
Yeah, where it's possible, yeah. To take it back to its healthy.
I would suspect that would be impossible.
You do?
What are you going to do, remove houses that are at Smithtown that are on the riverbanks?
Well, no, where you do it.
No, hang on.
I said where possible.
Parks?
Where possible.
No, that isn't what it says.
We're breaking.
Sorry.
Ask the question, Councillor.
Well, that does,
either that or go into workshop, one or the other.
This says recommend to the staff that they investigate the benefit of a complete regeneration of our river's riparian zone. So, in other words, you're saying a reforestation up to approximately 50 metres of the riparian zone for the entire generation, for length of our river.
Where it's possible. Obviously,
it doesn't say where it's possible. It says make the repair of the riparian zone for the length of the river a priority. So starting tomorrow, this is what the words say. I'm just reading back what the words say. It's impossible to achieve. And the damage that would be done to private land, not damage, the impact to private residents on private land, and even things like the views where there's just going to be all these trees and you can't even see the river for 50 metres because there's trees. It's impossible to achieve. The Europa riverbanks.
Well, of course you're not.
Reforested for 50 metres. I mean, if we're going to make a recommendation, it needs to be achievable. This is not achievable.
So you're speaking against you've spoken against the recommendation. You have the right of reply at the end of the debate because we're not in workshop.
The other question I have is how many people, this is to management, how many people gave feedback after the community consultation on the flood study that they wanted 50 metres of trees, the entire length of the river, made a priority over all of the other flood study projects?
0.
Director Fish, you would like to say something?
Yeah, just wanted.
And then I'll take Councillor Horval.
I just wanted to add, when the risk and management plan is done, it will obviously be publicly exhibited at the time, which will provide an opportunity for community feedback. I think in the current recommendation, it refers to the staff undertaking the flood study, investigate the benefits of a complete regeneration. When you, I guess, take that literally, that would likely imply the need for additional or new modelling, which would have a cost associated with it.
So I'll take Councillor Horval and then Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to ask a question of whoever knows, I guess. What's the definition of a riparian zone?
Would someone like to Google that?
I just think I don't think it's 50 metres or 100 metres. It's to do with the high level and low level part of the river, and therefore it's not a great amount of land. But I'm just wondering, what is the definition that we would be adopting if this gets resolved in the favour of?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. It's not I guess there's not a specific dimension in terms of the length or the distance from a river, but it's obviously essentially that interface between the land and a river and or a stream. So it could be defined in various manners, but broadly that's what it is.
It could be 50 metres or it could be 5 metres, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it would depend on the circumstances of the river or stream or creek that's in question, I would have thought.
Yeah. Oh, it is 50 metres all the way. We're going to have lots of impacts. My second point I'd like to make, and I'd have to make it to the mover, Councillor Baxter, that you change the wording to complete regeneration of the Macleay Rivers riparian zone. You personalise it with our, we don't own it. So and put the word Macleay in. It's not in the motion at all.
Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, technically I can't speak against it, so I'll ask it as a question. Why would we be, point 2, making work a priority when we haven't investigated what the benefits of it are? Point 2 I can't support at all because it's basically preempting what the investigation is going to come up with. And on that basis of what's been said in the General Manager's comments, I'd like to move an amendment if it's acceptable as an amendment, or if it's not as a foreshadowed motion, and that is that Council acknowledges the work being undertaken as a part of the Coastal Zone Management Plan in relation to the benefits of the regeneration of the Macleay Rivers riparian zone. Council receives a further report after the completion of the Coastal Zone Management Plan detailing recommended works in a riparian zone of the Macleay River.
Just wait a moment and pause while the minute taker has this down.
There was a question asked before, what's a riparian zone? Here it says riparian areas are lands that occur along watercourses and water bodies. Typical examples include floodplains and stream banks. Well, blow me down. I tell you what, we won't be reforesting the entire floodplain of the Lower Macleay. It's impossible.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn. I'm just waiting for the amendment that was moved, and then I have Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Shields wants to say something.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I speak while
Madam Mayor, do you need a seconder for the amendment?
Madam Mayor,
And this is a foreshadowed motion.
Madam Mayor, we move into
Hang
workshop.
on a moment, just a moment. You want to move that we move into
Move into
workshop?
workshop.
Do I have a seconder that we move into workshop?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Horval. Is there any dissent into moving into workshop? Four. That has been lost. We are now moving into workshop.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, so I'm going to talk to who was doing what here.
Madam Mayor.
We had a foreshadow. Well, we had an amendment, but I believe it is actually a foreshadowed motion.
Is it now speaking?
But maybe the mover would have accepted it into his motion, but we'll go back to that. And we'll ask Councillor Patterson, then we're going to Councillor McGinn.
Madam Mayor, I'm talking to the mover of the motion and being the seconder.
I'm sorry, Councillor Patterson, I can't hear you.
Just talking to the mover of the motion and myself being the seconder, I was just wondering if the possibility of some wording changes may be like recommended that staff undertaking the flood study focus on, where possible, the parts of the Macleay River bank erosion that threatens buildings or road network be regenerated as much as possible. But the issue why I brought this up is that I know different landholders that have land down on the banks going towards Southwest Rocks, and the last flood has eroded in towards where they have buildings, and it just happens to be on the outside corners of the river, going down the river. That seems to be affected, and I do understand that the council's flood management emergency committee, I think that was headed by just up the road here. Anyway, I do believe that council has been trying to address that where possible, but that's one thing that whether we need more education of our landholders downriver or upriver about what they can do and what they should do on certain parts of the river. But I do understand the relevance of this motion that Councillor Baxter's put forward, in that we're just trying to look at regenerating parts of our river that we'll never get back, and we'll just keep being eroded and eroded and eroded on every flood we get, remembering that we're on a 7-year average of major floods. So let's put that to the workshop.
Just go back and check with Morris.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm just going back to Councillor Morris to see if what we have captured is what he had said.
I think that's pretty much what I said, because I didn't have it written down. But in the last one, I'd like to add that detailing recommended works and potential funding source for such works in the riparian zone of the Macleay River. Which I think encapsulates what the intention is, but we're just doing it through a different study, which will come up with the same outcome without having to do an additional study in addition to the one that we're already doing.
I'm going to talk with ask Councillor Shields, and then I'll go to Councillor Williams, and then maybe back to Councillor Baxter to see his view on what has been put up. Councillor Shields.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, what are we doing? We have the Lower Macleay flood study currently being prepared. We have the Coastal Zone Management Plan currently being prepared. And now we are making policy and directing experts on what they should be prioritising. We could spend the next 30 minutes going back and forth, coming up with amendments and wording. This is business as usual. Let's let the experts do their job. And if riparian zones come out as a priority, then we will have actions to follow. Let's let them do their thing.
Well said, Anna.
Thank you, Councillor Shields. Councillor Williams.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to just also say something, but I don't really need to because that was just said. But we have been talking about this for a long time as a group of councillors. I mean, coming back and rehashing business as usual, and that's exactly what we're doing here. The General Manager's comments actually state exactly what we're putting in just there. I think we are wasting our time.
Yep.
We move back into open council.
Well, can I?
Thank you. Before we do, Councillor Baxter would like to say something. So I've just, and I had highlighted that before, and then we'll go into Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Morris, I'm happy to include those two suggestions and remove point 2, as you said. Point 2 is preempting what the flood investigation would do. But I'd bring it to attention to Councillor Shields and Councillor Williams that in the debate we've had just here for the last 15 minutes, it's been a constant complaining about the cost of what an investigation into this flood mitigation action would be. And as I tried to say in the background information to the thing, what I tried to say was, okay, so we spend $1 million or we spend $2 million, but if we're going to save 18 or 20 million, I mean, we accept these astronomical costs from the floods every 7 years, or it's going to become more frequent, as the experts tell us. $26 million worth of road repair or something. So all I'm saying is that to try and mitigate that cost, we should be spending more on this now to avoid a massive cost set down the track. That's all I'm saying. To make it a priority, sure, we're going to be spending more money, but okay, let's just sit back, business as usual, a little bit of riparian zone per year like we've been doing for forever, and another 30 or $40 million worth of cost at the next flood. Oh, the flood's come again. Oh, well, we better fix it. But all I'm saying is we spend a bit of money to mitigate, and the experts are saying it's the lack of riparian zone that's making the floods severe.
Councillor, I have had a
I'm just quoting the experts, sir.
Well, we haven't had the report back yet. But that's okay. Councillor, you will have a chance to close debate, which we've already given you 5 minutes to close debate.
That'll do.
Councillor Williams moved that we go back into open council, and Councillor Shields seconded that. So is there any dissent in going back into open council? Councillor Horval, you're dissenting?
I'm dissenting. I wanted to say something, Madam Mayor.
You'll get a chance to say something when we're in open council.
Thank you.
I will give you that opportunity because I did see your hand up. So we're back in open council. We do have a recommendation that Councillor Baxter indicated he would be happy to change to capitulate what Councillor Morris had said, which we're just about to put on the screen. And while that's happening, Councillor Horval wanted to say something or ask a question.
My turn now, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I just reminding my fellow councillors that this morning we voted in favour of putting the biodiversity strategy on exhibition. And from reading that, we know that the Shire has some very urgent needs in relation to the environment, and the riparian zone repair is part of that, because a healthy river gives a healthy environment. And at the moment, we don't have a healthy river, and I agree with Councillor Baxter that something more needs to be done. I don't think by putting this up as now coming through, that we get the general manager and staff in part of the flood study to investigate what would be the benefit of repairing that riparian zone. And I take on board Councillor McGinn's thought that we have a definition of riparian zone that would include the whole floodplain, and I'm sure we don't want that to be part of what would be suggestion. I also believe the floodplain starts at Belgrave Falls. That's where the tidal influence is, and therefore we really shouldn't be looking at the whole Macleay River right back to Armidale, but it should be just from the Belgrave Falls area down for repair. But that's subject to what the flood study would come up with. But I'm at the moment in favour of getting us to see what the benefit would be, having a regeneration of the riparian zone as much as we can. But we've also got to consider the fact that if there is repair of the riparian zone, we should not be imposing on the private landowners beside the river. It's a cost that would benefit the whole Shire community. Therefore, it needs grant funding, and that the repair of the riparian zone should not have any cost imposition on private landowners. So I would suggest we support what's now come out on the screen. Thank you very much.
Councillor where were we? Councillor Williams, you had spoken, hadn't you? So we're back really to for and against. Councillor Morris had his hand up, so I'll take Councillor Morris, and then Councillor McGinn, are you speaking again? Yeah, Councillor Morris first.
I've got a question which may lead to something further, and the question is either to the General Manager or to Director Fish, but obviously through the General Manager. What is the Coastal Zone Management Plan in regard to riparian management doing, and will it be investigating the benefit of regeneration of the river's riparian zone, or is that already being considered in there? And if it isn't being considered in the Coastal Zone Management Plan, is it a more appropriate vehicle to consider that and potentially attract funding through state and federal as a part of the Coastal Zone Management Plan process, or is the flood study the better vehicle to consider it? I don't particularly like having it done in the flood study and the Coastal Zone Management Plan. If the Coastal Zone Management Plan is going to be providing that information, why do it in two different studies?
Mr. Fish, and then I'll make some comments after that.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Morris, I think you've pretty well answered the question in it, and the General Manager's comment to the notice of motion effectively alludes that the Coastal Zone Management Plan is probably a better platform for recognising the issue. What it will likely do, as I said, basically recognise the issue and then outline potential actions that may mitigate or assist in alleviating the issue that exists, and then they will be prioritised, etc., and what potential funding may be required. Typically, the focus of any actions that council may do would only be on public lands adjoining river areas. But yeah, certainly that the Coastal Zone Management Plan would be the better platform for it, and as it's really stated, it's already occurring. So really, the recommendation that's before you at the moment doesn't necessarily add too much value to that.
Can I just add to that, Madam Mayor, and reiterate what Mr. Fish and Councillor Shield said? It's asking us to do what we're already doing. It's investigating the benefits of the regeneration of riparian zones. Everyone knows there's benefits in repairing, in the repair of riparian zones. That's obviously that it is. It's actually what's in cost and what's involved in all of that. That's what the Coastal Zone Management and our other plans are actually currently doing. You really are just asking us to do what we're doing if you adopt this. It's my other, I guess, the main concern is if you go to the level that this seems to indicate, that will require some detailed modelling, which would probably come out later through the Coastal Zone Management Plan. As we go through that process, that will be on exhibition. There'll be opportunities for people to have input into that. Council will be across that. It'll come back to council at various times. It just is a far better process to actually be following than adopting something like this, which appears a little bit haphazard.
Madam Mayor, I move the motion be put.
Have we had a speaker for and against?
You haven't had two speakers for and against.
Okay, does anyone want to speak against it?
Amendment.
I have an
Madam Mayor, I'd
amendment.
like to move an amendment based on the answers to my questions.
I'll take the amendment. I have to take the amendment.
The amendment is that we remove item 1 and we just have 2 and 3. Whilst I hear what the General Manager is saying, that it's telling the council's staff to do what they are currently doing, I see it slightly different. It's acknowledging that you are doing that work, which puts the message out into the community that we're not voting down doing something about the riparian zone, but we are acknowledging that council is currently doing something on that, which some members of the community may not be aware of the link between those.
So the amendment takes away number 1?
And just keeps, as I put my amendment before, because I don't believe we should be doing it in 2 separate studies and paying for it twice.
Councillor Baxter has his light on.
And yet, I agree with Councillor there, but just on the General Manager's point about modelling, the intention of the motion was to do that, to have the flood report or the whoever's doing the estuary management plan to do the modelling, to do the legwork, so that we can get big grants for the repair of the riparian zone, to improve our chances of cashing in on the $200-300 billion that the federal and the state government are spending to regenerate the economy, to stimulate the economy. I think it's a golden opportunity to get some big money to do a big project. What I'm saying is I think it should be a priority for us to try and reduce the damage from these relentless floods.
I need we have Councillor Morris's recommendation here, which is different to yours. So we're going to take the amendment. I need a second of the amendment. You don't want to incorporate. Was that what you started out to do?
Yeah. If we can do it through the coastal management plan, fine. If that's a better way to do it, fine.
So what you are now doing?
Couldn't hear that last comment, Madam Mayor.
Yes, I struggled with it too.
I'm agreeing with the amendment. If we can do the modelling and do the report through the coastal zone management plan instead of the flood report, terrific. Whichever way is going to get us, I think the estuary mob and state government, I think there's something like $88 million out there for grant funding. So if we get a lazy $2 or $3 million and regenerate some of the riparian zone instead of the piddly $20,000 and $50,000 grants we're getting at the moment, if we can do a proper to avoid the multi-million-dollar damage that we're getting.
Trees are not a silver bullet.
Can I have a question, Madam Mayor?
So, Councillor Morris, Councillor Morris, do you understand that Councillor Baxter is happy to take that? Yeah, you're happy with that?
Can I ask a question?
Councillor McGinn was going to speak against, and then we can put the motion. If that happens,
Just one question.
you've got a question. Yes, Councillor Patterson.
My question is to the General Manager. Item 2 on here, is that already being done?
Through the process of the development of the Coastal Zone Management Plan, Council will be briefed through that, because that is certainly several series of steps and phases through that, and Council will be kept abreast of that through reports and briefings as it goes.
So this entitles us just trying to tell you again, I suppose, to keep doing what you're already doing.
Councillor McGinn wants to speak against.
Madam Mayor, I think we've just wasted probably 20 minutes we're never going to get back. That we're all sitting here for a long time. The proposal that originally came to us as a recommendation, although the sentiment was right, the words are very clunky, and we've obviously now moved on to something that Councillor Morris has fashioned, which, you know, the words are better, but it basically just puts us back in a position now of what we're already doing. And just to clarify, I'm not against regeneration or not managing riparian zones, but putting trees or reforestation of riparian zones 50 metres back from the river, which is, by the way, 298 kilometres long, without being targeted is a nonsense and something we cannot afford to do. Water causes floods, not a lack of trees, and the simplicity that we've been given as an argument for supporting this that's come from Councillor Baxter is we spend 2 million and we'll save 18 million. Well, I can tell you if that was the numbers, I'd be the first one to put my hand up, but things aren't as simple as that in real life. And but going back to the now worded recommendation, if it's already doing if it's going to reinforce what we're already doing, we come back to this stupid position that we put ourselves in, that someone comes up with an idea and then we waste half an hour of our lives discussing something that we're already doing.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Horville.
Madam Mayor, Councillor McGinn just reflected that the work of council is somehow stupid, and I don't think you've been following the procedure and allowing things to happen as they should. To describe it as stupid is inappropriate, in my opinion.
Mayor, that wasn't Councillor McGinn's words.
Councillor Patterson, point of order. You just Councillor Horville has a point of order in front of him that believes that Councillor McGinn has been inappropriate.
Madam Mayor, I was talking about wasting time is stupid and it's a waste of our time.
I'm going to uphold Councillor Horville's point of order. We need to focus on the argument and the motion that is in front of us when we're directing our remarks.
Chair, could I?
Favour of Madam Mayor?
I move the motion be put
Yeah,
over.
Okay, we've got the motion be put, so you can't have a right of reply. We've had the right number of speakers for and against. I'm going to check that.
Madam Mayor, does not the mover have the right of reply when that's done? I'm quite certain from the Code of Meeting Practice
Yes,
the mover has the right of reply.
just checking to make sure we had the right movers and seconders. We're good? Your right of reply, Councillor Baxter.
Has the right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just read from this flood report from Queensland. The 3 floodplain properties with the best riparian vegetation were estimated to have suffered at least the least damage and the least loss of productivity, and around a third the cost of the damage compared to the areas where there was not healthy riparian zone. So to answer the learned councillor's crack about simplistic, these people, I think, have done a fairly thorough survey of their area up in Queensland and found, as a result that they've published there, if you bother to read that report, that it does benefit to have a healthy riparian zone. And the damage was a third of what the other damage was. So this is the argument I was putting for why we should spend the money, and that we would save money in the long run. And that's purely the essence of the NOM. and I ask you to support this. As far as we're just telling the council what they're already doing. To repeat myself, I'm sorry to repeat myself. What I'm asking is for the council to do more than they're already doing on the riparian zone. That's the essence of the NOM, not the council's already doing it. I'm asking the council to do 100 times more of the riparian repair that they're doing at the moment because of these fantastic long-term results we will get at the next flood, which the experts say will be more severe, and the experts say we will get more frequent floods. I think it would be common sense if you were told that by experts that there's more severe floods and more floods coming, that we should prepare ourselves for that.
Point of order, Councillor McGee. I understand that, but you can't interject while Councillor Baxter has got his right of reply.
Oh,
thank you, Councillor. Do you accept Councillor McGinn's apology?
Well, once again, I have to accept her apologies. That's right.
Thank you. Have you closed debate?
Yes,
have you finished speaking?
Debate, and I'm looking forward in a smug sort of way. I'm looking forward to the next flood.
Oh. Wow. Okay. We've closed debate. Is there any dissent on the recommendation? I'm going to have to dissent. The motion is lost.
Madam Mayor, could we have the voting, please?
Yes, the dissent was Councillor Shields, Councillor Williams, Councillor McGinn, Councillor Campbell and Councillor Saul.
Thank you.
We will now go on to 10.3, cinema recognition. Councillor Horwell, it's your recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that Council...
I need a seconder for a start. You can read first, and then we'll take a seconder, or if there's a seconder.
I'd like to move it and then take a seconder, Madam Mayor.
Okay, is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Morris.
Right, the recommendation, Madam Mayor, that Council 1 seek the concurrence of the owners of Kempsey Central Shopping Centre installing a plaque in the foyer of the cinema, which details A, the opening date of the cinema, 18th of December 2019, B, the contribution of $2 million by Kempsey Shire Council, C, the federal government grant of $2 million from the National Stronger Regions Fund, D, the names of the opening officials being Federal Member for Cowper, Patrick Conahan, MP, Mayor Elizabeth Campbell of Kempsey Shire Council, Gowing Brothers representative Chris Mulcahy, Majestic Cinemas, Kieran Dell, and 2, if concurrence is not forthcoming, by Gowing Brothers, install a plaque on an appropriate pole on the public footpath safely near the entrance to the shopping centre in Belgrave Street. I'll now speak to it, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Certainly, Councillor.
Ignoring the debate that went on whether this should happen, it has happened, and through the voluntary planning agreement, which was voted in favour of, we now have a superb cinema on top of the shopping centre, and we have a sign in the shopping centre. And is it possible, Madam Mayor, for the sign, which is the attachment, to be put up on the screen at the moment, please? Because I can talk to it.
Just keep speaking while that is arranged.
Right. There's limited information on that sign, and I would suggest that it will disappear in 3 or 4 years because the cinema VPA would have been completed. But a plaque itemising the historic event of putting in $2 million from Kempsey Council's reserve funds and $2 million from the federal government grant, National Stronger Regions Fund, which you can see on the sign. But the only thing on that sign that says Kempsey Shire Council, the symbol, and the Australian government It doesn't actually say anything about the money. It doesn't say anything about the people that were there on the opening day that put this very important structure within our community. The plaque should be put there so people can mark the event as being opened on the December the 18th, 2019, and it is a very suitable thing to have there as a history and a heritage item, because in years to come, people will go into that cinema complex and they will see that it is established by the work of Kempsey Council and the contribution of Kempsey Council. And $2 million from Kempsey Council's reserve is no small amount of money. And it should be recognised, the actual money amount that went into it, as well as the vote also enabled the federal government grant of $2 million. And without those two amounts of money, the cinema would not have been established by Gowings. They didn't have the money, but with that contribution they did. And their complex, it's a private shopping centre, of course, but it has the extra facility that's there now that enables people to go to the movies in the 5 cinemas, and it's world-class cinemas, and we should have something there to recognise that historical moment. So people coming into the cinema, standing around waiting for their tickets, will see the plaque and recognise that they're not just standing in some private show, that they're a private area that's been established by Kempsey Shire. And the work of the Mayor in leading council should be recognised, and it also should be recognising the contribution of the federal government in the fact that Pat Conahan, our local member for Cowper, was there at the opening, and that plaque will actually demonstrate that. So I ask my fellow councillors to support the establishment of this plaque, recognising the history-making construction.
Thank you, Councillor Horval. There's no more mics on. Is there any dissent on the recommendation? The notice of motion has
Madam Mayor,
been lost.
ask a question. It's finished.
No, Councillor.
Can't I?
No.
Can't I ask that Mr. Horval was against the cinema?
No.
I can't ask that.
Point of order.
I would like to answer the question. Yeah.
The vote was taken, Councillor Patterson. Point of order.
My apologies, Madam Mayor.
You apologise? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to answer the question.
No.
Next business.
We moved it. We've gone into. I'm sorry, we had questions on notice. I will start with Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just the one question, please, today. Can council make representations to the Local Traffic Committee over the road safety issues of truck parking and truck turning movements at the former BP Clubbucker service station?
Councillor Baxter.
Just one question, Chair. Could we have an update on any progress with the Indigenous community as far as economic development liaising with the Kempsey Land Council and the Dungutty Elders? Thanks.
Councillor Shields.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. No questions on notice. I'll just ask them directly to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, just a couple this week. Given the response to questions 13 and 15 from myself contained within the agenda, when is it anticipated that Council's bitumen patching team will waterproof the pavement as a temporary repair for the asphalt failures in South Street and Sandstock Road? Given the answer to question 17 from myself contained within the agenda noted at the time of answering the question, the June 2020 accounting period had not been closed, can the answer to the question be given at the first meeting following the closure of the June 2021 accounting period? And then following that, I've asked the same question because the answer to that could be yes and not actually give the answer. So what was the community's investment for the attendance of the Mayor and General Manager at the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly in Canberra during June 2021? And my fourth question is there any legislative reason that prevents Council from reporting councillor fees and any other allowances to the Australian Taxation Office in a similar manner to the one-touch reporting mechanism, thereby automatically populating councillor fees as income for taxation return purposes? Thank you.
Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question 1, are there any Southwest Rock sites available on council-owned or managed land for the construction of a council building, library and community centre, with the ground dimensions of approximately 55 metres by 70 metres? Are any such sites subject to an undetermined land claim? Question 2, why was the Audit and Risk Committee minutes presented to June Council reporting a declaration of interest by Councillor S. McGinn that she had accepted a position on the board of Statewide Mutual, in brackets, not State Cover Mutual, which was the fact? Why was this not noted and corrected, and will this error now be corrected? Question 3. As questions with notice are asked by councillors and answered by council staff for the benefit of the community, why was an answer to question 13 from Councillor Horval asked at the June Council meeting not answered in writing in the July Council business paper? Question 4. How many National General Assemblies of ALGA has the Mayor attended since 2017, and does this number enable attendance to be labelled traditional and not subject to Procedure 5.15? Question 5. Why was a verbal reply to question 13 by Councillor Horval at June Council not also in a written form or orally in the July Council business paper, as required by the Code of Meeting Practice 9.17 and 3.16? Question 7. Why was a verbal reply to question 2 by Councillor Morris at June Council not also included in a written form or orally in the July Council business paper, as required by Code of Meeting Practice 9.17 and 3.16? Question 8. Why was a verbal reply to question 4 by Councillor Morris at June Council not also included in a written form or orally in the July Council business paper, as required by Code of Meeting Practice 9.17 and 3.16? Question 9. What would be the approximate cost to complete the Smith Street development design by installing a covered pedestrian crossing similar to the ones in Central Coffs Harbour? Question 10. Where in the Code of Meeting Practice is the backing for the Chair's ruling that there must be speakers for and against in order during a debate on a motion, or does this only apply to when a councillor moves a procedural motion to put the motion? They are my questions, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Williams.
I have no questions, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My apologies to staff that I haven't got this to you earlier. My one question is, Madam Mayor, how much do questions on notice cost council in time and money when over 2 or 3 questions are asked up to 20 at one time by a councillor, which could be answered by staff at any time?
Councillor McGinn.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Taking the length of term of the current council, could the General Manager please advise which councillor wins the race on the on having the most questions on notice in a single meeting.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn. There's no further questions. We will move into confidential. Do I have
Move that way, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Saul. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Williams. We are now moving into confidential. Councillors, point of order. We're live again.
In relation to item 11.1 legal matters, council took the resolution that the information be noted.
Thank you, Mr. Thorogood. That concludes the July council meeting for Kempsey Shire Council. Thank you, everyone.